Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hard Hats and High Tech, the podcast from RIB Software, where I'm joined by industry experts who help me unpack some of the challenges of modern day construction. In today's episode, we're going to discuss the importance of cost management in construction projects and share some practical tips to help you achieve success. I'm your host, Bernardita Calzon, and I'm really happy to introduce you to today's guest, Graeme Braybrooke. Hi, Graeme, how are you?
Hi, Bernardita. Well, thank you and yourself. It's great to be here. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining me today. Would you like to get started by giving our audience a little bit of background into who you are?
Yeah, sure. So, as Bernardita mentioned, Graeme Braybrooke is my name. I currently reside in the UK, just south of London. I've been with RIB for a substantial amount of time, so seen all the changes, just under 14 years. My background is in quantity surveying, so I've worked internationally. I've started in South Africa, as you can hear it from my accent, down in Cape Town, the beautiful part of the world, and then I spent just under a decade in the Middle East, and within that time, I did my honours in quantity surveying as well. So some fantastic experience in terms of being part of the construction industry and seeing what they do in the Middle East, a place like Dubai or Qatar or Bahrain, and now in a place like Saudi Arabia. They're really cutting edge construction, amazing buildings, amazing architecture, and I think in terms of experience, it was always a fantastic place to spend that amount of time to see that happen and to see it unfold.
So that sounds like an exciting journey.
It has been. It's got its ups and its downs, like construction would. But yes, it's been an exciting journey. And currently residing, as I said, in the UK and leading a team of consultants, which obviously look after certain applications within our RIB realm.
Okay. Well, I am personally not that much of an expert in cost management, so I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and learn a little bit. So should we get started with it?
Yes, go ahead, by all means.
Okay, so let's start a little bit more general. What would you say is the biggest impact in the overall success in construction project when it comes to cost management?
Cost management, when you think about overall success, it's really looking at being able to make your project or assist your project in as being as profitable as you basically want it to be. And the management of costs is obviously that's the important part of it all, right? There are so many nuances within the construction industry in which actually makes cost management a very difficult practice to do, right? And I think being able to have foresight into those possibilities of things that could happen, I think it's like having a crystal ball, right? It's being able to be able to think about these things and the possibility of these things that could happen in any project. So it's difficult, but it is manageable to a certain degree, and I think a lot of companies do it to a certain degree, but there's obviously nuances to how they do it and betterments, and everybody can learn from everybody, right, in the industry. It's just one of those things, and it's what makes construction actually so fantastic, is that it's and difficult at times is the amount of let's say nuances that the industry carries.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a fundamental part to the success of a project, and like you say, I'm sure it's not easy. So considering the importance of cost management, could you maybe explain the key components of a successful cost management strategy in construction?
Yeah, sure. So I think when we think about cost management, there are a couple of like really important things that we can think about. And I think if we delve into the cost management, we need to start from somewhere, and having a comprehensive estimate, a detailed estimate at the beginning stages is always very important, because if you look at the essence of project management, even cost management, it's the ability to be able to judge yourself at any given time period or any time frame, right? So where did we think we were going to be and where are we now? Right. So I think having that estimate at hand is obviously very important, and it could be a number of different ways, right? So it could be really granular. I know in certain parts of the world they go into the nuts and the bolts of a project, and that's how they need to manage their costs. If you have a look at someone like an MEP contractor or someone like a civil contractor, they're very different in terms of the materials they look after, the infinite details that they need to have. But it starts off with the estimate, right? It really is having that granularity and to measure back on, I think is very important. And then budget development, right? So you could have multiple iterations of a budget. You could look at your budget in different stages of it. But if from a P-tender kind of view, to handover, or to actually almost like a budget to build, really, where the project team actually takes accountability of what the estimators have done, or the project that they're about to entail or go on to. So very, very important is that it is going to change, right? And it is going to change with information, because in many instances you have contracts which will actually they will progress in terms of the design, the development of the design, change orders or variations, like we know in construction. That's one thing that is going to be part of our daily lives, is variations and changes. So being able to have the ability to change management and to actually track those changes, I think also part of very vital in the greater scope of cost management and let's say the strategy for it. You're looking at things like risk management as well, right? The construction industry is it's I keep on saying it's amazing. It's amazing because it's like an adventure, right? You go on this amazing adventure every time you sign up to do a project, just because of all the differences that you have. So being able to anticipate some of those risks, and it's something that's many instances are over and above our control. You think about social economic aspects. You think about the weather. You think about the risk that people in the UK will have to deal with in terms of when they can actually work, inclement weather conditions. All these different things that you need to take in consideration. Cost forecasting and reporting, of course, also very important. Being able to take that granular detail of your estimate and forecast it over duration of time just really gives you a good benchmark to work from. And then technology, right? I mean, we're in that digitalized, let's say the digitalized environment where that's what we preach, right? Because if you think about we're going back to many years ago when they did a quick investigation on the most digitalized in industries, and construction was one of the least digitalized. So we're going back from contracts managers writing down a cost on the back of a piece of paper, right, on the back of his book, and that's how they worked. But technology has become so valuable to our clients and the industry, because it provides just nth degrees of reporting, of information, timeless information that a lot of people need. And you can have a look at it in different ways, but in essence, I think that's quite important. Is the technology it just puts us in a different realm of getting the information out. And then also something that I found that's very, and it's lacking. I find in many instances where we go and we talk to clients, and we talk to contractors themselves, is the actual amount of information that gets fed back to the estimating team, right? There's almost like a disconnect between information. Yes, we get good information from the estimating team to the post-tender team or project management team, but coming back to the estimating team, it's almost like there's no a good project review. And I think that's also very, very valuable for just getting back to that more accurate estimate for better baselines, for better budgets, for any next project. So yeah, in a long time, and a lot to say, that's what I would say is a good strategy to start off on the cost management side.
Okay, you mentioned a lot of really like relevant topics there, risk management, technology, financial forecasting, which we will touch a little bit more on later. But what you're telling me only highlights how complex this whole process is, and I'm sure it's not free of challenges. So what would you say maybe are some of the biggest challenges that companies face today when it comes to managing costs?
Yeah, sure. I think, if you think about the industry itself, some of the major challenges that a lot of people would deal with is like I was mentioning, is like that social economic type of challenges. If you think about having an estimate, a refined, defined estimate, you could be the most accurate estimator or engineer and provide, infinite details to this. There just has to be one occurrence of something that happens on site or something that happens in a neighboring country, that could just upset the total project itself, or even the regional projects, right? Or the construction industry in that region. So, biggest challenges I find is that there are so many small challenges which would make the total industry just very difficult to work with, right? And I think that to me is one of the, if not the most challenging aspect of construction, and cost management for that, because if you have a country, and I hate to say this, if you have a country go to war in a neighboring country, that could completely do many different things in terms of your labor force that you have, the resources that you're buying from, or the materials that you're buying from, the logistics, all of these types of things, and that plays a big role. And especially when you're trying to manage costs, it's just things, the unknown, right? That could possibly have an effect on the industry or your project itself. So that's what I feel is let's say the biggest challenge.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge. I can imagine. Now,
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit to technology because I know it's like a huge thing in construction today. So in light of some of the challenges you just mentioned, how do you think technology improves these challenges or helps tackle them?
Yeah. And I think that, a question like that is very pertinent, especially, from our background. And if you think about, where we've come, where the construction industry is, right, and how it's progressed in terms of technology. It's real-time data that we're trying to get out, right? It's live data that we're trying to get out, because a lot of that live data actually gives backbone, or it gives us information to make proactive decisions, right, on a lot of these challenges that we face. And if you think about, like I was mentioning, social and economic issues anywhere in your neighboring countries, or in your country for that matter, being able to have that information at hand, or what effect that challenge will make on your contract or on your project, I think is vital. And I think that's where technology actually becomes very important, is that you have live data, you have it at hand. You can be from one side of the world and you can actually see that type of information, live via a stream of some sort. So yes, for us, and in the construction industry, I think technology is playing a huge role in trying to do that, trying to, let's say, mitigate those types of challenges.
Yeah, I mean, data is a huge asset for the construction. I mean, for any industry, I guess, especially when it's in real time and you can use it to base your decisions and find improvement opportunities. So I know it's really valuable, but I know also it's not easy to learn which data you need to track and everything. So in your experience, what are the most useful metrics companies can track for cost management?
Sure. And I think there are a whole bunch of metrics that we can look at. Things like, one that we really deal with is cost value reconciliation, right? So, if you think about a metrics, in terms of where we are versus the budget, in terms of where we are versus the estimate, it's always the ability to almost report or record how you're doing based on those estimates that you created, or the original budget that you've created at the start of the project, because that then really aligns with how are we doing in terms of firstly our productions, how are we doing in terms of our wastages, our plant usage, all of that gets put in place in the beginning. It gives us the ability to actually have a look at where we are at a given stage. So cost value reconciliation to me is one of the most important. And that leads to cost performance indices. So a tool that a lot of a lot of contractors use is earned value management, and that's really looking at things like I said, the cost performance index as well as our schedule performance, because even though that's what we're talking about today, the cost of a contract could be highly affected if you fall behind on your schedule, or you go over your specific deadlines or handover deadlines, right? And then you're going into penalties and all that type of stuff. So schedule performance is also very important. I spoke about resources. I spoke about the ability to actually measure where we are in terms of the comparisons with the cost. So resource utilization, also important, because that goes back again to the estimate and how we built the estimate up, and was the estimate accurate. Things like indirects as well. That's one of the in the construction industry, indirects plays a huge part of the costs, and it's actually something that we need to maintain. So if we are falling behind on schedule, what effect is that going to have on our indirects? So there's a lot of that type of thing. And then contingency and risk, I think, is the last real aspect in terms of indices that we've got to have a look at. So risk, every contract's going to have risk. Every contract is going to have a certain risk which you could, let's say, have foresight or forecast. But then, how do you mitigate that? In terms of if this risk is coming, do we have contingency in case it does happen, right? So those are I would say those are the main indices, or the main aspects that I would say would be good to start off with.
Okay, so these ones will help companies get like a complete overview to make the best financial decisions.
That's it. And once again, it's having all those in place to be able to make those proactive decisions that you wanted to do, right? I mean, that's why we put those in place.
Okay, that's great. Now I want to go back to financial forecasting, which is also related to data. I'm sure this is like a hugely powerful tool. So how could you say construction teams can improve the accuracy of their forecasting?
Sure. And that's coming to that one of those initial points that are raised about having that detail available and having all that information clearly defined at the beginning of a project. Being able to put in a let's say a detailed financial forecast, I mean, is obviously very important, because that's that benchmark again that we're comparing to on a regular occurrence. So, and I would say things like, the clearly defined project scope is very important. This industry is based on a lot of very steadfast deadlines and timeframes, and a lot of the times the actual, let's say, clearly defined scope is not as clear as what we thought, and we would much rather get the project and make sure the client is happy than have all the information at hand to actually complete the actual contract and to build the project that we're building. But there's huge risk involved there. So having a clear scope, I think, at the beginning is very important. And then also having that historical data, right? It's something that's so important to us, and we don't do it enough. I know a lot of companies are putting a lot of emphasis on benchmarking to previous projects or to estimates, etc. So it's just being able to compare with other projects which could have gone a certain way. Technology, the use of technology, also very important. As we were saying, it's having that information available timelessly to put in all those nuances which could have an effect on the actual scope of the project. Early engagement with stakeholders, right? So and we are going that way. The industry has changed a lot in terms of how adversarial it was, in terms of yes, this is the client. The client wants to maintain, he wants to build his asset, but he wants to maintain a certain price for it. Um, you know, and they never really got contractors involved in the past. But that's changed a lot in the industry, right? And I think that's also very important because that also then alludes back to the, how can I say it? It alludes back to that clearly defined scope in the beginnings because the contractor knows exactly what he's going to be pricing then. And that's that early engagement. And then skills development, right? I think skills development is very important. And it doesn't matter what aspect it is. It could be skills development on technology, skills development of training expertise. And I think that's all partaking in having a more accurate, forecasting and that's my take on that.
Okay. Yeah, forecasting, it's a huge technology. And
Yeah.
like you say, collaboration and everything is always or should be at the forefront of any process, I think, in construction.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Now
we don't do it enough.
Yeah, I've heard from other experts here. So,
Yeah.
but I've heard that we are already doing things to improve it.
Yes.
So that's positive.
Yeah, no, very much so. Very much so.
Okay, so we've discussed technology, some strategies, but I think we haven't mentioned maybe enough some of the reasons for cost overruns in construction projects. So in your experience, what are some of the most common reasons for this?
Oh, and I think this almost alludes back to a lot of what we said previously is that, we think about construction and all the effects that can, that affects any project. There are just so many things that can affect it. But, um, one of the things is an estimate, right? If we don't know what we're building, if we don't know, if we don't have it clearly defined, we might not even have proper drawings at any given stage, right? So, all of that is very important, and that really drives an accurate estimate. Because that's the most important. So making sure that our estimate is accurate is one of those things. Then things like uncontrolled changes, and this is also going back to all those other things that we mentioned in terms of what can affect a contract, what can affect a project, and it's just so the amount of things that can happen that could have an impact on a contract, I think is huge. So uncontrolled changes is just one of those things. Reworking items, right? So, bad quality of workmanship, that's another thing that that could also happen, right? If we think about, a certain type of a paint or a certain type of a wall going up, and the client or the architect is not entirely happy with the quality of what comes down. It's a re-break and break it up and demolish and cart away and rebuild. So that's already 3 activities which are going to have an increase on the cost because it was not done properly in the first place. And this is then coming back to timeframes, right? And if we had good timeframes, we could have done a better job in building it, etc., etc. So it's almost like a snowball effect. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Procurement controls, I think, is also quite important. You could have the most amazing estimate, you could have the most accurate estimate, but almost like the first defense comes on looking after and making sure our procurement management or procurement processes are accurate, right? So, are we purchasing more material? Why are we purchasing more material? Are our labor hours far greater than what we originally, are the costs of labor far higher? Are we using direct labor versus subcontracted labor? All those types of things. And I think the procurement process plays a vital role in, like I said, that first defense of making sure we don't go over our allowable or over our budget. And then, you have the inadequate project management as well. And, that could be, and that going back to what I was saying earlier on with regards to, things like rebuilds, reworking, that type of thing. Contractual issues as well. I was saying earlier, the industry is always very adversarial. There's always, the different parties always looking after their own, after their own, let's say information. They're looking after themselves during a contract, and I think that always puts quite a lot of pressure on contracts, and contractual issues play play a big role. We never want to get to that. You never want to get to that scenario, but it can happen. Yeah, and I think that's basically it on the major.
Well, that sounds like a lot.
It is.
It makes your work sound that much more impressive because managing all of those aspects must be really, really difficult. And like you say, of course, a lot of planning is really necessary, but also there's unexpected issues in construction projects. So how do you say construction companies can manage these unexpected costs without sacrificing the quality of the project?
Sure. And that's a difficult one because, it has that, if you're falling back on your cost and you're overrunning on cost, that's automatically going to have like an effect on your quality. You always got your back against the wall if that is the case, right? And, depending on the contract, you need to build to a certain type of quality, and whether it's quality of processes or quality of actual workmanship, or all that, that plays a vital role. You always that reactive type of scenario where we're running short, our costs, the costs incurred are higher than what we envisaged. Let's get a different material, or we go for a subcontract labor, or we do it with direct labor. So it's all those little, let's say, knock-on effects which have an issue with or can affect your quality of your build. But planning and design, that's obviously important. That puts that, once again, it just puts that benchmark into what we need to look after. You're looking at things like labor productivity. That's if we're building and we project managing and our labor productivity is good, that means our quality is also going to be good. So all these little effects on all of that aspect. You're looking at material wastages. One thing that really became quite important was almost prefabricated modular type of construction, where it was built out of site or off site on in an enclosed environment. And I think that makes certain things in construction very simple because yes, okay, there's added logistics to get those modules and those, let's say, those prefabricated items onto site. But it takes a lot of those other things like the weather, inclement weather and that type of thing. And it almost gives you quite a better lead up process or a lead time to get those modularized or those prefabricated units done. And I think that's quite important. That's quite important as well. And then learn from the past mistakes. I just want to harp on that because we're supposed to learn historically about what has gone wrong, what's gone well, and I think that's very important for any let's say reducing costs and not let's say running into our quality and the quality that we're accustomed to.
Okay, so experience also plays a huge role.
Yes,
so
it
you
does.
can pick alternative materials and things like this.
It does. It plays a huge role in it, and that's why I think that's one of the biggest things and why it's so important to really reiterate is that depending on the technology that you use, learn from history. Right, it's there. It's set in stone, right, because it's happened, and learn from it. Yeah,
that's good advice. Now, we talked a lot about how complex and unique the construction industry is. So how do you think it differs in cost management to other industries?
well, and that's also it's almost like everything that we were discussing it like in the last short while, but it's so specific to construction because there are just so many things that affect our project and affect our day-to-day, and we need to put in place those, let's say, those rules and those processes to make sure that we mitigate any of those uncertainties that happen. If you take a manufacturing plant, and this is something that we go back to the prefabricated, the modular type of construction where it's made within an enclosed environment. We know what's happening. Let's say weather doesn't play a big part of it then, but there's so many other things that would, and that just mitigates that type of that type of cost or that type of risk. So yeah, dealing with weather, dealing political issues. We've just faced all those challenges. I can think back into Dubai, when it comes to productivity, labor productivity on site. You have guys that are working in the middle of summer, and they've got to set off a certain time, and they work at night rather than work in the day. So it's all these types of things that you've got to think about, and that's what's make construction, it makes it really exciting, but also very daunting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, you have given us a really good overview of the current state of cost management in the construction industry. But what about the future? So before we finish, could you maybe give us a little bit of an overview of the trends that will be shaping cost management in construction?
Sure. And I think it comes back to, the technology that we're using. I think technology to shape what we have now and to shape it what it's going to be in the future. I think that's going to play a huge role, right? When we think about standardizing certs, and every company is different when I talk about standards, but you think about cost performance indices. That's something that's almost like a standardized type of practice throughout many companies. But technology is going to play a huge role in the future, and I think that the ability to, you look at things like BIM. Yes, BIM has come. It's been many, many years that it's come along. It is getting better. It is progressing. But I think the information, and this is coming back to that, the data that we're going to be generating, the live data, where we are in terms of the 3D model, the cost, the 6 different dimensions that we're looking at. I think that's going to be very pivotal for us. And I think if you go back to the construction, you go back to the projects, you go back to how people work now in terms of a hybrid. You could be sitting in the Far East and you can understand how your project is doing at any given time because you've got 3D scanning and you've got these drones and you've got all this types of information on there. So I think technology is going to make is going to really drive that. And I think BIM is going to be at the heart of it. There are obviously a lot of things that need to happen, and things that we need to iron out. But I think the industry will get there. The industry will get there.
Okay. I mean, if we have learned anything in this podcast, is that it all goes back to technology. So yeah, it seems like it's a really exciting time in the construction industry right now. So yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. It has been really educational and interesting for me, and I'm sure it will be for our audience too. So thank you very much for your time. And to our audience, thank you for joining us once again, and we'll be back with another episode of Hard Hats and High Tech very soon. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.